You're probably going to hate the answer to this question, but anytime someone asks me a sports nutrition question, chances are that 9 times out of 10, I'm going to probably start the answer with "it depends," or "it depends on the context." It almost always has "it depends" in there, because there are very, very few situations where it is a clear 100% black and white answer. For example, if someone is celiac, the answer for should I eat gluten or not, that is a very clear no. We don't want to be eating gluten and wheat products for someone that has celiac disease. But if someone has an intolerance, then we might include some gluten or some wheat in some of their foods. But it would still depend on the context, because it would depend on their symptoms, the severity. But in that scenario, we have that clear knowing that the gluten is causing symptoms but not harm, where if someone is celiac, then it is a clear context of no, we definitely will not be providing this product because it will be providing harm as well as perhaps sort of symptoms. So the thing is with nutrition is that there are so many factors that influence what is right for us: our personal preferences, our training loads, our lifestyles, our location. And this means that there isn't a universal everybody has to eat this way, everybody should eat at this time, everybody should eat this amount. But what I find is that there's patterns and situations where there are opportunities for us to eat more. We want to be eating more, particularly when it comes to the food and the fueling around the training. But what that looks like is going to depend on what that training is. You might be going on a 1 hour ride, but a 1 hour ride, what is that? Like, it could be a 1 hour recovery ride where you're just sort of softly pedaling. It could be a 1 hour ride where you're doing intervals or sprint sessions. It could be a 1 hour ride where you're going up hill climbing. Like, all of those different training sessions, in theory, it's the same time, the same duration, but what that consists of and what that demands and takes from your body and what you need to fuel that is going to be different. And so some situations you might fuel with real food, some situations you might use drinks or sports products and gels, other times you might use lollies or like faster fuel, and other times you might decide, I don't need to fuel this at all. Again, it depends on what you're trying to get out of that session and what the aftermath is, which is where I like teaching people to start thinking intentionally about how does the food that I'm eating now support what I'm about to do, rather than being in that reactive catch up calories sort of mindset. If we start thinking about, okay, our training is what's going to dictate where we want to add more food in. We've got our everyday nutrition that we need to stay healthy, to stay alive and be functioning really well. We add food in for training. If we're going to race, we want to test and experiment and figure out what is working for us, what isn't working for us. Because I have athletes that race really well and they purely run on Coke, because they've tested and they've tried everything else and they are now really clear that Coke is the best fuel strategy for them. Other people, it's a particular brand of gels. Other people, they might be using dates and real food that they've made themselves. Again, there's no one size fits all. So if you're evaluating nutrition messages and information on the internet, if it's coming with like, you must do this, you have to do this, it's always take it with a big grain of salt and then test it and experiment for yourself to see, does this work for me? Because you might have personal preferences. I have vegan athletes that I work with, and sometimes, and they'll come to me like, please don't tell me to eat meat. And no, like, I personally eat meat, but I support people whose their personal preference is not to. And I would never force anyone to do that or force them to change their personal preferences and personal beliefs. It's like, how do we work with this to make sure that you're getting your nutritional needs within your personal sort of preferences? And we might need to use supplementation for that, but there isn't a blank. There's very rarely situations that everyone must take this, everyone must avoid this. So when you're thinking about nutrition, think about, how do the food choices suit me? Where am I sort of struggling? And start evaluating ways that you can make little tweaks and adjustments. So anyone that's a field team member that has gone through my framework, they will know that that first week of when I'm working with a new client, or if they come on board in my team, they start applying that, is to just get clear on what you're doing. Because writing it down and starting to uncover all these food rules and the patterns and the beliefs that we have around food, we start to sort of discover all of these things that may be limiting us. And those food rules, they may be in there for life. And it may be like, that's too much, that's too little. It might be a certain number. I can't eat more than 200 grams of carbs. I can't eat this. And that belief and that thought might not be serving you, because if you're doing 4, 5, 6 hours of training a day, you might need to eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories in order to support that. This is where it really does come down to the training that you're doing, the lifestyle that you have, and experimenting and finding the strategies that work best for you. It's not a one size fits all. I find that if you start with your baseline, you start with what you're currently doing, and you start assessing that and be like, okay, what's working? What isn't working? What do I want to keep? And what am I willing to change? Start making small tweaks and adjustments and changes. So it's now October. You don't have to wait to January to start making a change. You don't have to start at the beginning of the week. You don't have to start at the beginning of the month. Every meal that you consume is an opportunity for you to make a smart choice and to make a small improvement, like little tiny baby steps. Even if they're only really, really small, you can write it off as being insignificant. But a lot of people, they want to lose weight. And rather than being like, oh, I'm going to skip that meal, or I'm going to just like stop eating a particular food, if you just reduce your intake of it by 5-10%, 100 calories here, in multiple places, collectively can lead to bigger deficits that are sustainable, that you'll be able to maintain for weeks, months, and years, versus being like, okay, I just can't wait till Christmas before I can start eating and drinking again. And then a couple of weeks later, you're like, oh, why did I do that? Like, how did I gain all this weight? Because of the surplus that you have. With nutrition, we want to be trying to be more sustainable with our choices, be more sustainable and realistic, thinking long term for our health, because performance is part of that, but our health feeds into our performance, and our health is physical health, but also mental health as well. And food is so much more than just those numbers and the calories and the nutrients that we're having. It's eating with people. It's eating different times and eating outside of our rigidity of like, no, I have to eat at this specific time. And sometimes people do have to eat at a specific time, because if they're, say, for example, type 1 diabetic, if you've taken a shot of insulin, you need to eat around that, because that medicine is going to have that effect whether you eat or not, and the negative effects of not eating far outweigh the importance. So again, there's always a lot of context you need to take into account when it comes to your nutrition. If I can encourage you to do anything this week, it's just to start thinking about what you're doing. Look at, how can I make a smarter choice? What am I doing that right now that's working? What am I doing right now that isn't working? What step can I take? What action step can I take? One small little thing that's going to baby step me into feeling better or performing better with my food nutrition choices. And then once you identify what it is you're going to do, go and do it. Easier said than done, because so many times, I know myself, I'll plan to do something and then I'll talk myself out of it, or I get into it's too busy. Becoming aware of these little thoughts and lies that we tell ourselves that hold us back from doing the things that we want to do. This is part of the process of making changes that are sustainable and finding the solutions to overcome those barriers. That's my encouragement for you this week. Look at where you might find a couple little tweaks and changes. Go and find where you can take action. So that's all for today. Like, subscribe, feel your ride, and I will see you next time.